up, my peeps? It's the turtle smashing, dragon punching, titan smashing, zombie blasting, race car drifting, multiplayer butt whipping, the collector of coins, rings, looms, rupees, and tanukis. I got food for self, emeralds for wealth, and med packs for health. I got the double jumps, turbo boosts, time freezes, and invincibility. Leveled up all of my abilities. I run Vice City and made the Mushroom Kingdom better, and I am the first human Spectre. This is Mastermind, and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about classic video game companies. What do they mean today?
EA Sports. It's in the game.
Sega!
Did you hear that? Did you see it? And how did it make you feel? Whenever I talk to younger gamers and I talk about companies like Konami, Capcom, even Sega and Nintendo, I talk about companies like Tecmo, I talk about companies like Namco, I talk about all these different companies that I grew up playing great games. It can be anything from developers to EA Sports, it's in the game, or just seeing the Hudson sign come up. Whenever that would happen back in the 16-bit era, some of the 8-bit era, and even in some of the 32-bit era, I would get extremely excited knowing that some of my favorite companies were producing great games. It's different today. And mind you, there's no shortage of great games. In fact, in many aspects, games are better now than what they ever have been. But there's so many games in the market now, and the market is flooded with so much that it's almost impossible to really get a good feeling of what a company's about, especially if they're just publishing games and you have other developers. That's why a lot of people get so hyped up over indie developers, just smaller studios. And a lot of these smaller studios are really producing a lot of passion projects, but not all of them are really full of passion. There are a lot of people looking for a quick buck. They create these cheap games and they bring them out on mobile phones, and they're just kind of getting the most profit that they can and not really concerned about the gamer. But for the most part, smaller studios are really pushing, and they are trying to innovate and create some great things. And I know I throw a lot of criticism at Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, but honestly, we gotta thank them because they are really forcing companies and making themselves accountable, and they're creating great games. I can talk about anything from Halo, Gears of War, The Last of Us. Nintendo is bringing out Mario Maker, which is going to be amazing, and mind you, very original. Now Street Fighter V, which I've been talking a lot about, that Sony is helping Capcom with. So it's not all bad. This video isn't meant to complain or to put down what's going on in the video game industry now. I just think there are some elements that are really missing when we look at some of the older companies. You always wanted to know what they were going to bring out next. Back in the day, whenever that Capcom logo came across the screen, you knew you were going to play something amazing. And if it wasn't amazing, it still was pretty damn good. Same thing with Konami, same thing with a lot of other companies. And we just don't have that anymore. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing to see where the video game industry has gone as far as corporations go. I mean, I know overall it's growth for video gaming, and it's provided people with all kind of jobs, and it's just become a huge industry. And I am quite proud to be part of that community and what it's grown to. But just like anything in the world, whether it's music, whether it's film, whether it's anything, it's never as pure or as good as what it always started out to be. So for instance, if you like hip hop music, but you're like old school like I am, you grew up listening to a certain kind of hip hop, certain kind of groups, and that will never ever be duplicated or even come close to that feeling that what it once was. It's more popular today. It's not the same. Same thing with films and movies. You know how everybody always says they just don't make them the way they used to. The same principle and the same thing applies to video games. They just don't make them the way they used to. And the few companies that do are usually smaller. They are not necessarily better. They're just smaller. But a lot of times the smaller companies are more passionate. And I like what I'm seeing now, where bigger companies and publishers are hiring these smaller companies to create games for them, like what Microsoft is doing with Iron Galaxy and they did with Double Helix. It's not just doing ports anymore, where, like, for instance, the Street Fighter 4 port to the PlayStation was kind of a disaster. But it's not just that anymore. You have some companies that are creating games for bigger companies, and that's a really, really great thing for the most part, because they're passionate and they want to keep working in the industry. But when you have, on the opposite end, you have like companies like Sega, who's just pretty much allowing anybody to create a Sonic game, and they're just making these Sonic games with just whatever, just because they can say, I'm going to put our stamp, our franchise, boom, on this. We don't care what the quality is. We don't care what's inside the box, just as long as the outside of the box is pretty. And that kind of mentality has really hurt a lot of these older companies, because the consumer isn't buying their games like they used to. And that's the bottom line. If your games suck, we forgive you and we'll move on. But if it's consistently where it's just one bad thing after the other, and you just keep putting the stamp on a great franchise and you're destroying the franchise, we're going to eventually stop investing in that company, and your company will go down. And that is essentially what is happening now. In many ways, Nintendo is still holding on to that retro kind of thing, but I feel like in a lot of ways they're kind of lacking the originality that they used to have. And when I say that, I know some Nintendo fans get upset. And I'm not saying that to just put Nintendo down, but it's because I really do believe that at one point they were the total innovators. And I don't mean like, this handheld controller or a Wiimote. I'm not talking about the gimmicks, because that's what it is. It's gimmicks. And I don't care what anybody says, it's a gimmick. And it's a powerful marketing gimmick, but I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about revenue. I'm not talking about what the Wii did. I'm specifically just talking about games. They were the innovators. If you think about what Super Mario did, if you think about what Super Metroid did, if you think about what Zelda did, if you think about even how they went from 2D to 3D in Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time, if you think about how Nintendo has innovated games, you can't argue that the Nintendo that we see now isn't doing that. They're kind of rehashing and perfecting that style, but they're not innovating and creating something totally brand new and something that we haven't seen. They're just kind of slightly improving a formula that they already have. And their innovation now seems to be in the hardware. I don't even consider that innovation, because basically they create a gimmick to produce the cheapest hardware possible to excuse the fact that their system can't do what other current generation systems are doing. And that's been happening since the Nintendo 64. And it's the same thing if you think about Sega. Now again, I'm not talking about the hardware, because Sega had quite a bit of gimmicks too, but I'm talking about gaming. So specifically, how they took the formula for Super Mario, let's say, and they said, you know what, if we made a really cool character and we made him fast, and we gave them an attitude, and then we innovated as far as the way you collect your rings and the way your energy bar is, which wasn't an energy bar, it was just the rings. They totally created something new out of an existing formula already. And then, of course, you had games like Golden Axe and Altered Beast that they were dipping their toe into something that we weren't playing at the time. You know, monsters transforming and Zeus and gods and magic, and we weren't seeing stuff like that. And they were innovating in that way. Then, as they started advancing and they did virtual racing, I remember the first time I saw that in Daytona, I was just like, oh my God, this is like in 3 dimensions, and it blew me away. Same thing with Virtua Fighter. It was totally just innovative. I was used to Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Killer Instinct, those kind of games. And then Virtua Fighter comes along and it's like, holy shit. And then you had other companies that kind of took that formula and they tweaked it and they did their own little thing. And that's how we've gotten video games to where they are now. I think any company that's doing a 3D fighting game owes a lot to Sega. Any company that's doing 3D third-person kind of games, they owe a lot to Nintendo, or 2D games for that matter. And then Konami. Let's not even go there with Konami. The whole thing with Hideo Kojima. Look, this is what my opinion is. If you have someone who's kind of the face of your company, and Kojima is the face of Konami that we know, even though there have been other developers or whatever, he is like that representative. Don't let that guy go. The creator of Castlevania, he's gone. Now he's making this other game. Capcom, the creator of Mega Man, he's gone. Now he's doing Mighty Number 9. Even the Kickstarter program for Shenmue. That broke records. Why? Because people like myself want to see these classic franchises return to form. Not just in name, but return to what they were.
Sega!
When you saw those logos pop up, you were excited. Now, you gotta wonder when you see them, especially if you're old school like me. First thought that comes into my head now isn't hype, yo, this is Konami, or this is Sega, this is coming out. No, that's not the first feeling I have. The first feeling I have now is this game gonna suck? Thank you once again for watching. If you enjoyed this video and other videos, please don't forget to click subscribe on the screen and tune in for more videos. Thanks again for watching. Mastermind out.